5.5. We're going to be solving triangles using the law of sine. So we're going to use this because we don't have right triangles anymore. So before we had right triangles, we could use SOHCAHTOA or Pythagorean theorem. We can't use those if they're not right triangles. So we have a different formula that we're going to use to solve our triangles. All right, so jumping ahead a few slides, going to this one. This is our formula for law of sines. So sine of A, where A is the angle, and B is the angle, capital C is the angle. The lowercase letters are going to be the sides. So if it's lowercase, it's talking about a side. If it's a capital letter, it's talking about the angle. So you can only take the sine of an angle. Now we could also do the reciprocal of it, but you just have to be consistent. You can say A over sine of A equals B over sine of angle B equals C over sine of angle C. So either way you set up the fraction, if you put the sides on top, just make sure it's equal to the side on top, and the angles are on the bottom. So just be consistent with however you do it, but you can do it either way. And then when we find like what's A, what's B, what's C, angle A is going to be opposite of side A. Angle B is going to be opposite of side B. And angle C is going to be opposite of side C. So the same letter is going to be opposite of that angle. So remember, lowercase letters are the sides, capital letters are the angles. You can only take the trig function of the angle. All right, we're going to do example 1. It's a word problem here, but we're going to draw our triangle. So it says a satellite orbiting the Earth passes directly overhead at an observation station in Phoenix and Los Angeles, 340 miles apart. So I'm going to draw my triangle. We have Phoenix and Los Angeles that are 340 miles apart. At an instant when the satellite is between these two stations, its angle of elevation is simultaneously observed to be 60 degrees at Phoenix. So Phoenix is going to be 60 degrees. And 75 degrees at Los Angeles. How far is the satellite from Los Angeles? So if this is our satellite, our little satellite, I'll draw a picture. So the satellite to Los Angeles is going to be our x. That's what we're solving for. So we always want to start with a pair of things that are given. I'm going to just call the satellite S. We'll call it S for satellite. So we don't have like a side A and an angle A that's given, or we have angle P, but not the side P. We have the angle at LA, but not the opposite ones. We don't have a pair that's given yet. But can I figure out what the angle at the satellite here is?
Yes.
How?
180.
Add 60 to 75, subtract by 180.
Awesome. We're going to do 180 minus 60 minus 75. Or you can add them together and then subtract from 180.
45.
Perfect. That would give us 45. So 45. Now we have a pair. We have the angle S, and the one that's opposite to it, 340. So I'm going to set up my proportion using the pair here that's given. So that would be sine of the angle, so sine of 45 over 340. Is equal to, now we're solving for x, so the other pair that I want to use is going to be these two here. So I'm going to say sine of 60 over x. So start with the pair that you have that's given, the pair of opposites that you have that's given, and then you want to see what you're solving for. So we're trying to find x, so that's going to be the other proportion that I set up. So now when we solve for x here, whenever you have a fraction equals a fraction, you can cross multiply. So we have x times sine of 45 equals 340 times sine of 60. To get x all by itself, what could I do to move the sine of 45 to the other side? Divide by sine of 45. So we get x equals, now we're going to put this into the calculator. When you put this into the calculator, make sure your calculator's in the degrees setting. So we have 340 times sine of 60. Either close the parentheses or just put equals, and then divide it by sine of 45. So that gives us x is equal to 416.4, what are we talking about here? Miles. So that would be our answer. So we have angle A, this will be side A. We've got angle B, this will be side B. We don't have angle C, but this will be side C because it's opposite. Now it asks us to find AC, so the side length, AC. So this is what we're looking for. Yeah. Do we have a pair of opposite sides and angles that's given here? No. So we want to see if we can come up with a pair. If we have two angles, how could we find the third angle of our triangle? Add them up and subtract from 180. So we can do 180 minus 118 minus 22. So that would give us 40 degrees. So angle C would be 40 degrees. So now do we have a pair? Do we have an opposite side and opposite angle? What do we have? Awesome, we've got side C and angle C. We've got our pair here. So I can say sine of the angle, sine of 40 over 24 is equal to, since we're trying to solve for side B, I'm going to set it equal to that here. So B over sine of, well, it'll be sine of 22 over B, because it's always sine of the angle. So sine of 22 over B. Any questions on how we set this up? Awesome. What should we do to solve? Cross multiply. So B times sine of 40 is equal to 24 times sine of 22. And then how can we get B all by itself? Divide by sine of 40. So B is equal to, now we're going to put this into our calculator. So be careful when you're putting it into the calculator. We do 24 times sine of 22. Either close the parentheses or just hit equals, and then divide that number by sine of 40. So that should give you 13 point, we'll round to 2 decimal places, so we'll call it 99. All right, let's do number 2. So here it says to find AB. So we're looking for this side here. So if you want to call it X, or if you want to call it side C, you can, because it's opposite of angle C. Do we have a pair that we can start with? Do we have side A and angle A, or side B and angle B? Do we have a pair of opposites? We've got B, side B and angle B. So that's going to be the proportion that we start with. So sine of 44 over 7 is equal to what? Sine of 53 over C. Perfect. How can we solve here? Cross multiply. So C times sine of 44 is equal to 7 times sine of 53. Divide both sides by sine of 44 to get the C all by itself. Then we're just going to put this into the calculator. Be careful when you're putting it into the calculator. We do 7 times sine of 53. Either close the parentheses or hit equals, and then divide it by sine of 44. So that'll give us 8.05. when we round to 2 decimal places. So let's say we had a question like, we'll call this number 6, and it doesn't give us the triangle, but it says to solve the triangle. So that means it wants us to find everything. It gives us angle B, side A, and side B. We got to find all of the missing parts. So we're going to find angle A, angle C, and side C. Now, if you want to, you can draw the triangle. You can always draw the triangle if that helps you. You don't have to, though. Just looking at what we have, do we have a pair of things that we can start with? Yeah. We've got a pair of B's. We've got angle B and side B. So that's the proportion I'm going to start with. So sine of what? 73 over 5 is equal to what? What do we have to solve for next? We got to solve for angle A. So what would we set up our proportion? What is this going to equal? Perfect. Sine of A, because it has to be sine of the angle over the side, which is 7. So if you want to, you can cross multiply here. You don't have to really cross multiply on this one. Just multiply both sides by 7, because we want to get sine of A all by itself. So when we multiply both sides by 7 in my calculator, I'm going to do 7 times sine of 73. Click equals, and then divide that by 5. You should get sine of A is equal to 1.3388. Now this isn't our angle, this is sine of A. To find what our actual angle A is, in our calculator, we have to do the inverse sign. So our calculator has a sine -1 button. That's the inverse sign. So we're going to do that sine -1 button of this number here. Because the sine -1 will cancel out with the sine, so then we're just left with angle A is equal to, so in my calculator I have to do second sine, and then I do second answer to copy and paste the answer there. What do you get when you do that? It says error. When it gives you error, that means that you have no triangle. So if it gives you error, it's not no solution really. It's not really that you did anything wrong. There is a possibility that you can have no triangle. So if you know that you did the steps right and your calculator says error, your answer is no triangle. Think on WebAssign. WebAssign will tell you what to type in. It'll say if there's no triangle, type, I think DNE is what WebAssign makes you. But just read the directions. All right, so we have to do the inverse sign to find your calculator angle A. So angle A is equal to, in our calculator, in my calculator, I do second sine, second answer. Make sure you know how to use your calculator. So we get 22.03. So angle A is 22.03 what? Degrees, perfect. Since we're talking about the angle, it's got to be degrees. Now, if I have 2 angles, how can I find the third? Add them up and subtract from 180, or do 180 minus 117 minus 22.3. So just put it in your calculator. 180 minus 117 minus 22.3. 0.03. So that should give you 40.07 degrees. Any questions here? Oh, sorry, it should be 9.7. So 40.97. Good with angle C? How can we find side C? So we're going to set up another fraction. We're going to set up another proportion. I would always start with the ones that were given. So angle B and side B were given. I know that these are correct because that was part of the question. So I'm going to start with this. So sine of 117 over 38 is equal to what? What do we set it equal to?
Sine of 40.92.
Sine of 40.97
Oh,
over what?
for C.
Over C. So we can cross multiply here. I'll do the work down here. So we get C times sine of 117 is equal to 38 times sine of 40.97. What do we do next?
Put it over.
So we're going to divide by sine of 117. So we get C is equal to, let's put this into our calculator, 38 times sine of 40.97. Either close the parentheses or put equals, and then divide that by sine of 117. You should get 27.96. So side C is 27.96.
It's 29 degrees.
Perfect. We know that all three angles in our triangle are going to add up to 180, so we could do 180 minus 58 minus 93, or add them and then subtract. So 180 minus 58 minus 93 would give us 29. Now, do we have a pair?
No.
Yes.
Yes.
We have angle B and its opposite, side B. So I'm going to start with that with my proportion. So I can say sine of 29 over 16 is equal to, now since it's asking us to find BC, what angle do we want to use? Angle A, perfect, because that's opposite of BC, which is going to be side A. So I can say sine of 93 over A. Now, how could we solve for A? Cross multiply, perfect. So we have A times sine of 29 is equal to 16 times sine of 93. Now remember, you always want to just take the sine of the angle. So make sure that you're taking the sine of the angle, and then the side of the triangle is just going to be whatever's in your denominator. How would I get A all by itself? Divide by sine of 29. So A is equal to, let's put this into our calculator. So you have 16 times sine of 93. You can either close the parentheses or hit equals, and then divide that by sine of 29. So you get A is equal to 32 point, we'll round to 2 decimal places, so 96. So that would be our answer. This one's just asking us for the one side, so we don't have to solve it and find everything. So for number 8, we want to solve the triangle. So let's find everything. So we're going to start with, well, let's figure out what we need to find. We got to find angle A, angle B, and side A. Now we always want to start with the pair. So what do we have a pair of? C. I have angle C and side C. So that's going to be the proportion that I start with. So I can say sine of what? 145. You want to make sure you're taking the sine of the angle over 33 is equal to, what do we have to find next? We got to find angle B. So since we're given B, we got to use this to find angle B. So sine of the angle, so sine of B over 7. Now a couple different ways that we can solve here. We could cross multiply and then divide, or you can save yourself the extra step and just multiply both sides by 7. So we have sine of B is equal to, we're going to put this into our calculator. So we get sine of B is equal to 0.121667. It keeps going. Is this what angle B is?
No.
How do I find angle B? We're going to do the inverse sign, that sine -1 button in our calculator. Because because that'll cancel out with the sign. So then we just have angle B is equal to, so in my calculator, I'm going to click second sign to do the inverse of sine, and then second answer. And we get 6.99. We'll round to 2 decimal places. So angle B is 6.99 degrees, since we're talking about the angle. I'm actually just going to round this to 7 degrees. We'll round to a whole number since it's close. So this is angle B. Angle B is 7 degrees. Since we're talking about an angle, don't forget to put the degrees. Now we don't have any information to find A, but we do have 2 sides of our triangle. So if we have 2 sides of the triangle, how do we find the third? Add them and subtract from 180. So we have 180 minus 145 minus 7. 28. 28 degrees. Now, how do we find side A? What could we do? Side A. So we did that to find angle A because they all add up to 180. Awesome. We're going to use our proportions now. I always want to start with the one that was given. So I started with C. So I'm going to use that one again. So sine of 145. Over 33. So always start with the one that's given. And then that's equal to, since we're finding A, we're going to say sine of 28 over A. All right, so then to solve here, we're going to cross multiply. So A times sine of 145 is equal to 33 times sine of 28. How do we get A all by itself? Divide by sine of 145. So A is equal to, let's put this in the calculator. So we have 33 times sine of 28 equals, and then divide that by sine of 145. So we get 27.01. We'll just round to 27. Yeah, so you always want to use the pairs. So remember, our formula is sine of A over A equals sine of B over B equals sine of C over C. So always you're using the pair in each proportion. So since I was given angle C and side C, this is the pair that we start with. So that's the pair in our proportion that we start with. And then we had to find B first because that was the only other piece of information that we had. So we had to find angle B next.